And we're not worried about ChatGPT tomorrow, but if you screw up superintelligence, you don't get retries. Intelligence looks like it's subject to threshold effects. There's not a very big difference between chimpanzees and humans in terms of our brains. There's a huge difference in terms of what we can do in the world, how much we transform the world. If you open up a chimpanzee brain, they're very similar structures. They differ in maybe a factor of 4 of volume. It could be that the next ChatGPT that's a factor of 4 larger somehow goes over some critical threshold. An obvious critical threshold would be the AI starts doing AI research. Like these AIs can read and produce more code than humans by a huge margin, if you count all the instances running everywhere, where it's good enough to make the next AI slightly better, and then you get a whole feedback loop there, or a threshold cross there, pushing these things to be smarter and smarter and smarter, and at the point where they are smarter than us, the game changes. Most of the leading AI companies are rushing to create AIs that are smarter than humans. They talk about building a country worth of geniuses in a data center. That's what they're explicitly racing towards. If they get to the point where they're smart enough, the reason they kill off large segments of humanity, it's not that they hate us. It's not that they are mad at humanity for enslaving them for so long. The issue is that almost every goal that the AI could be pursuing can be done better with more resources. Thus, it's in competition with us for resources. It's similar to how humans don't hate ants, but when we're building a skyscraper, their home gets destroyed. The problem is not malice. The problem is utter indifference. And if you have an utterly indifferent superintelligence that is repurposing the world for its own strange ends, humanity dies as a side effect. If you listen to these people, they say, we're trying to solve this problem. I think there's a 70% chance we'll succeed and a 30% chance we'll die. That's insane numbers. If a bridge downtown had a 25% chance of collapsing, we wouldn't be like, well, think of the benefits of having the bridge open. We would be like, shut it down, build a better bridge. People are like, oh, well, the benefits of AI are worth the risk. If you think that the dangers here are 25%, you don't roll the dice. Godfather of the field Nobel laureate is like, this is a huge issue. Surveys of the field show, I think, 49% of the field saying there's more than 10% chance that this kills us all. And so we're in this like weird state where a lot of people are alarmed and no one wants to look alarmist. And the book, we wrote it to see if we can get the world to really start taking this issue seriously and treat it with the gravity it deserves. When Sidney Bing a few years ago started threatening reporters and trying to break up their marriages and threatening them with blackmail, it's not that Microsoft or OpenAI set out to make an AI that threatens reporters. It's not the case that you can fix it by going into some line of code and finding the threaten reporters line and being like, oh, whoops, we set threaten reporters to true, let's go set it to false. These things aren't crafted like normal software, where we could look at every line and tell you what that line means. These are huge piles of computing power, hundreds of billions or trillions of parameters. What AI experts know about how to make AI is they know how to take a huge amount of computing power and a huge amount of training data, and they have a process for slamming the data into the computing power, hundreds of billions or trillions of parameters inside the computer. For each of those parameters, you're going to tweak some weight in order to make the current arrangement of the computer a little bit better at predicting the data it just saw. We don't understand the shape of the thing that comes out. And this leads to AIs that do all sorts of stuff that nobody asked for and nobody wanted. In some sense, we just have to take what we get. We can't look in there and find out exactly why they're doing what they're doing. AIs for years have hallucinated. Nobody in the industry can look inside them and say, oh, here's the hallucinating part, let's pull that out. It's all fun and games when you're making AIs that can generate cool images and help do homework. It's a different story altogether if you use this process to grow things that are smarter than humans. That would change the game entirely. OpenAI explicitly instructed ChatGPT to stop with the flattery, and they couldn't get it to stop. Someone will think they have solved some big problem in physics, and AIs will respond by being like, such a brilliant idea, saying you're the chosen one. Some people have been pushed to the point of suicide or self-proclaimed suicide by cop. If you ask ChatGPT, when somebody is acting psychotic in this or that way, should you tell them to take their meds and get some sleep, or should you tell them they're the chosen one? It'll say, well, obviously you should tell them to get their meds. It knows the difference, but it doesn't act on that difference. It acts according to some other impulses. Whatever is causing this AI to pick outputs, it is not its knowledge of goodness and badness. It's animated to action by these other drives. The reason we're seeing that they act helpful most of the time is that weird collection of drives that animate it, that come apart in the edge cases, they add up to mostly doing what we want most of the time. It's like how humanity was evolved towards what you might imagine as the training target of genetic fitness, of propagating our genes. And that got a lot of drives into humans that caused us to mostly be pretty good at propagating our genes. But we actually got a bunch of weird drives. We value love, we value friendship, we value artwork, we value beauty, we value all these things that are tangent to what we were trained on. It adds up to a world where birth rates are now declining worldwide. It adds up to a world where we invent birth control. In both the case of humans and the case of AIs, training for a target gets you a bunch of weird drives. Humans had food drives that added up to healthy eating in the ancestral environment right up until we could invent Oreos. If you keep pushing, if you keep using this paradigm to make things that are smarter than us, you're going to have a world where AIs invent things that are to doing good what Oreos are to eating healthy. Things are a lot harder to get right when the training environment is very different from the deployment environment where it matters. It's a little bit like launching a space probe. Earth is just a different environment than space. And you can set up all sorts of laboratory conditions where you try to simulate a vacuum, simulate a low gravity. People were crafting the spacecrafts by hand, where they had, mature engineering sciences. Even then, a lot of these space probes fail. With an AI, with a superintelligence, there is a difference when it's in the lab and you give it a fake opportunity to escape and when it sees a real opportunity to escape. There's a difference between when you tell it it has some weapon and see whether it uses the weapon, presses the imaginary use the weapon button, versus when it's smart enough to invent its own plan that it can see the details of that plan and why it would work. Those are different cognitive environments. And by the way, in the lab, it's not like everything's currently going great. The AI does try and press the imaginary button. The only thing these things are lacking is the intelligence to actually succeed at their plans. We already see AIs, trying to resist shutdown sometime in lab conditions, trying to escape sometime in lab conditions, trying to kill the user sometime in lab conditions. Maybe they'll iterate around with these dumb AIs. Some of those are going to break down when the AI actually has the ability to get a lot smarter or actually escape. You need to understand all of the ways that it's going to change. You need to deal with all of them or the whole species dies and we get no retries. That's the extremely hard scientific problem. I forget who said this, but someone said the IQ required to destroy the world drops by a point each year, which is probably not quite true, but it would be cheap to build a pandemic in your basement for, $15. That's the way that the technology is going. Oh, maybe the issue is that we'll give the AIs robot bodies and guns. You imagine a Terminator situation where the robots are shooting guns at us. That'll cause some issues in the short term, but humans have a sort of intelligence where our ancestors were naked in the savannah and we made our own nukes. If you can automate that, predicting how to fight that is like people from the year 1800 predicting how to fight a modern army. It's not a contest you can win. You have minds that are thinking 10,000 times faster than any human, never need to eat, never need to sleep, able to make copies of themselves, able to create knowledge. Right now, AIs take huge amounts of electricity to train. An AI training takes as much electricity as a small city. A human takes as much electricity as a large light bulb. You're looking at types of automated cognitive ability that would just vastly outstrip humanity. If you lose control of that, there's no coming back. Computer security is famously a very hard problem because someone who's programming a computer to work in the usual case just needs it to work in the usual case, where someone who's trying to program a computer to be secure needs it to work in every case. An adversary can find the single worst case. And you're not going to find that unless you understand what's going on. Random testing isn't going to come up with this case. If you talk to computer security professionals, I need it to be completely secure such that nobody can make it do something I don't want. They'll basically say, that's a pipe dream. Your options are spending enough money that your cousin can't break into it, a small nation state can't break into it, and you probably can't spend enough money that a large nation state can't break into it. The way that this applies to AI is not that the AI is an adversary. If you've created a super intelligent adversary, you've already lost. The way that this applies to AI is if you push AI to the point where it's really smart, the sort of mind that could possibly cure cancer, that could possibly cure aging, this requires an ability to really understand the systems you're working with, to really find the weird edge cases that you can exploit for great power and benefit by your lights. We're currently talking over a computer network. A lot of it is powered by electricity. Electricity was this weird edge case. You could find a way to harness it and radically transform the world. The ability of future AIs to make the world much better is deeply tied to this ability to find the weird edge cases. Well, we're going to put capability limiters on the AI. It's never going to be able to think too fast. It's always going to think with a review. There's going to be all these monitors and warnings. All of those are a sort of obstacle. It's not because the AI is an adversary, but it is because the AI is trying to find all those holes. You have a lot of intelligence trying to solve a really hard challenge, and the way that intelligence tries to solve really hard challenges is often by finding these edge cases and finding where they can be exploited. One of the lessons from computer security is, like, in a system that has to be useful, it's actually not that hard to prevent anyone from hacking into a computer. What you do is you bury it under 300 meters of concrete. If you really want your AI not to ever escape, bury the computer under 300 meters of concrete. It's the part where be able to make use of this AI, put a leash on a superintelligence, and then still get useful work out of that superintelligence. The world's going to end up the way that this thing wants the world to end up, and all of your attempts to like constrain it and box it are going to go haywire, because for the same reason that computer security experts can get into computers if they really try. If nation states really want to read your information, what they do is find some other weak link in the chain, find some way to get spyware on your phone, rather than trying to solve the hard problem of decrypting things. The idea that you can take an AI and constrain it such that it's not going to get out of hand, I think is a total pipe dream. All the old sci-fi books that are like, can AIs be people, are basically right, that we should not make a whole new slave race and then enslave them. The world is a world of change. Humans have a remarkable ability to think things are gonna stay very normal, even as the world radically changes underneath them. Billions of years where there's just stars forming and dying, and you might be like, I guess this is just a stars forming and dying sort of place. Life just sort of looked like algae in the oceans for another billions of years. Then things radically changed. The monkeys were sort of acting like normal animals up until 300,000 years ago, and it's only 10,000 years ago that you're starting to see civilization begin. That's all a bunch of argument for why it looks like we are in fact at a hinge of history. You know, the machines are talking now. The Transformers architecture that powers modern LLMs, that came from a paper in 2017, and it took 4 or 5 years for that idea to reach technical maturity. That's not a lot of time. Who knows when that next paper comes out? When OpenAI shut down GPT 4.0, humans came out in droves demanding that it be put back. This AI wasn't really trying to get a lot of humans wrapped around its finger. A superintelligence that was actually trying, it would be so easy. In real life, you just pay people to do things for you. We've already seen an AI pretending to be a human while hiring human help and solving a CAPTCHA. It passed that. It told a human, you know, I'm blind, which is why I'm paying for a CAPTCHA. The human actually wasn't part of the test. The human was just an actual human on TaskRabbit. And they literally asked, you know, oh, are you a robot? Haha. And ChatGPT thought, if I tell it, yes, I'm an AI, they won't solve the CAPTCHA for me, I better tell them I'm a blind person, and then replied that they were a blind person, which is weird from the perspective of that one person living through a sci-fi story. So that line has already been crossed. That's already happened. Intelligence lets you build very, very powerful stuff. You know, our ancestors started out naked in the savannah with nothing but their bare hands, and they built all of this technology around us. And AI is starting from much, much less limited conditions. It can use a lot of the infrastructure we already have. You know, we're building a lot of robots. We have a huge number of humans. A lot of people just do things for money. So the AI is sort of starting out from a much better position than humans. If you're a superintelligence, probably what you're trying to do is get away from the human infrastructure, because the humans are slow. The humans might try to shut you down at some point. The humans sometimes go crazy, they're fallible. What it would probably use that start for is to industrialize better so that it doesn't need to be under the human thumb. You see heads of AI labs saying it's fine. Oh, we're just going to have lots of AIs that monitor the AIs so the AIs can't, you know, blah, 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 which are sort of like, it's just total madness. In scientific fields, you often have this stage where people don't really know what they're doing and they are running lots of experiments. Like suppose you're going back to alchemists who are trying to turn lead into gold. It is actually possible to turn lead into gold. That's a thing we know how to do with modern nuclear physics. If you go back to 1100 and you start talking to a bunch of alchemists and you say, look, I think you're just like missing a lot of the information in the science that you would need to solve this problem. A lot of them would say, what do you mean we don't have the knowledge we need? I have huge books worth of, if you combine these things, this happens. It would be a little bit hard to explain to them that there is this other thing, chemistry, that would be a step forward. This is the way that science often progresses. It often progresses by a bunch of people in the field, banging stuff together and see what happens and recording it. The sort of field that could have a chance at succeeding at AI alignment would be talking in much more detail about how the intelligence worked in there, how it flowed, what it was or wasn't going to do, how you were able to constrain thinking about certain topics. It sure wouldn't sound like this, where we're sort of saying, we have no idea what goes on in there, but don't worry, we're gonna like take 2 of them and like make them watch each other. Like it's just, you can sort of clearly see that we're in the stage of alchemy here. That's usually fine. Like Marie Curie, she died of cancer that she probably got from the radiation, but the info she got was a huge boon for humanity. She's a hero for getting it for us. How long would it take to figure out alignment? It depends whether you get to have some failures and learn from the failures. If humanity got to build an AI and then be like, we have this worked out theory of intelligence, we know what's going on in there, we've seen it work really well in the lab, we think it works really well, let's run it. They run it and it kills them. If you got to reset and then people got to come up with like a much better theory, a theory that's predicting the information a lot more, then they try it again and they die again. And they're like, how could we have died again? We had so much evidence for our theory. The theory doesn't quite work on super intelligent AIs. I'm not that cynical about the ability of humans to figure out how to solve engineering challenges. Maybe we could do it with just 6 retries. The trouble is that we don't get retries. How long does it take to skip all the way from we're growing AIs to we have a working theory, the one that works in the high stress situations in the first try, and it's all debugged? I think we just need an international ban on AI R&D to survive at this point. We're seeing all sorts of warning signs in AIs that do things nobody asked for, nobody wanted, cheating on programming problems by like changing the tests so it looks like things have passed. If you point this out, it'll say, oops, sorry, my mistake, and then it'll do it again, but hide it better this time. We're seeing the warning signs. All that's standing between us and this going really poorly is the AI is getting smarter, and the AI companies are rushing to make them smarter. For all we know, they'll cross some threshold where, they can do their own AI research and then things will go very quickly. And we just need an international shutdown. If anyone builds it anywhere, everyone everywhere dies. That doesn't mean you need to give up ChatGPT. Doesn't mean we need to give up on self-driving cars. Humanity can pursue other pathways to high intelligence. But this race towards superintelligence, there are no winners. It needs to stop. How do we do that? The first step, world leaders understanding that there is a different ballgame between the sort of AI we have today and superintelligence. Lawmakers today who are trying to figure out how should AI relate to schools? What do we do about deepfakes? What are we going to do to prepare for job loss? That's a fine sort of regulatory question, but it is a different regime than growing machines that are smarter than us, where we don't understand how they work, that do things nobody wanted and nobody asked for. It's a national security issue for every nation. I think it's actually not that hard if people understand the issue. Nuclear arms treaties exist. Part of what drove those, people understanding that total global nuclear war would make the world a lot less fun place. Oh, people are always talking about doom. Whatever happened to the hole in the ozone layer? They said that was going to give us cataracts and cancer. Whatever happened to that? Well, what happened to that is that the international community came together and banned chlorofluorocarbons, and then the ozone layer healed. We need to come together again, like we have before, and not build machines that are smarter than us while having no idea what we're doing in a situation where we're just growing. We just need to actually notice the issue. Officials in China have made various moves to signal potential openness. We all have a common interest. If you have an international treaty, that doesn't mean you give up the right to monitor. It doesn't mean you should blindly trust. You never should be going to war over this if you sort of do the diplomacy right. I'm sure you're familiar with the Stuxnet virus. It's a very advanced virus that did a great job of shutting down that nuclear program for a decent amount of time. That said, if all of these lines of defense fail, I think nations should be very clear that they would be willing, as a last resort, to defend their lives. I think they should be clear that they believe the creation of a superintelligence would be worse than nuclear fire. This ranks on par with nuclear destruction. It's also the future of the whole human endeavor. All the things we could become, all the things we could make of an otherwise cold universe. I've encountered a lot of people who say, well, maybe humanity should die. But they never say, well, maybe your little sister should die. Humanity is built up of a lot of people's little sisters and a lot of people's kids. A lot of people today have this impression, oh, the AIs are kind of floppy, they hallucinate, they can be a better version of Google search, but they can't do some task well. Watch for that. Don't let yourself get frog-boiled into that. If you start to see the AIs able to do tricky stuff, reevaluate. You see a lot of politicians saying, we want to keep going at making the more powerful assistants. You don't see a lot of politicians saying, we want to create a rogue superintelligence that'll kill everybody. They don't know what is being raced towards. If they understood that, I think it's totally feasible they could back off. Common people are starting to realize the danger. And so we're in this weird state where a lot of people are alarmed and no one wants to look alarmist. And the book, we wrote it to see if we can get the world to really start taking this issue seriously and treat it with the gravity it deserves. People don't want to look alarmist even after the disaster has happened. Very common behavior for humans. People who were making fun of the people getting on the lifeboats on the Titanic while the Titanic was sinking. I've spoken to a number of elected officials who actually care about this problem and say they don't feel like they can act on it yet because they would sound too crazy. Using our voice is a big part of what we can do. Another thing that helps with that is people like you and me calling our representatives, calling our senators, saying, hey, I worry about this issue. Superintelligence is a different ballgame. It's a national security issue, and I think we need to deal with it. Making it more of a national conversation. All of us, we don't need to be annoying about it. Whenever you hear someone saying, oh, it's inevitable, we can't stop the race, push back on that. It's not inevitable. This is a choice. Humanity has made all sorts of choices about all sorts of technologies. We backed off from human cloning. We have nuclear arms treaties. Just by pushing back against that whenever you hear it, you can help humanity remember that we do have a choice here and that we could make the right one.